Andrew Breitbart. Andrew is what we call a happy warrior, and we are happy, are we not? This actually is a peaceful protest, is it not? But happy is only half of happy warrior, because our country is calling upon us now to be the other half. We now need to be warriors. Every generation has had to face an evil of some kind. Typically it's been from abroad, it was foreign, now it's domestic. But our Constitution prepared us for enemies both foreign and domestic. We will fight this fight and we will win this fight, but in order to win, you must first know your enemy. And that's what I've dedicated myself to in my writings and my speeches, is to know, because they didn't just come out of nowhere. What you're witnessing now is the fruition of a plan long in the works. You are watching the culmination of a plan that started with the 60s radicals, who did not hide the fact that they sought to overthrow this country. They did not hide the fact that they were socialists, and they were bad, bad people. One of them goes by the name of William Ayres. William Ayres founded a terrorist group called the Weather Underground. Such despicable human beings that at the very first meeting of the Weather Underground, they took time out to cheer Charles Manson. Because Charles Manson had done, or at least attempted to do, what the Democratic Party was attempting to do, what the radicals were attempting to do, which is to divide and conquer. That's what Helter Skelter meant. Helter Skelter was a cataclysmic race war. And that's what the Democratic Party has been trying to start since the 60s radicals. Since Bernadine Dorn, the wife of William Ayres, approached a bank of microphones and said, "Hi, I'm Bernadine Dorn, and I'm going to read to you a declaration of war." And they sought to start that war by dividing us by race, which is why when the radicals came along, they didn't join the party of abolition. They didn't join the party of women's suffrage. They joined the party of George Wallace and segregation and Jim Crow. Because it didn't matter to them then or now whether whites hated blacks or blacks hated whites, so long as we hated each other. They tried to foment a revolution and they failed, because nobody who had lived in the real world, the last of the great generations, wanted any part of the socialism they were selling. Millions had fled that socialism under Hitler to come here. Millions had fled that socialism under Stalin to come here. And millions more went overseas to fight those things. And when they came home, they wanted no part of what they are selling then and now. There's a great story in my book, forgive me, I have to do it, it's called The Woke Supremacy. That's what one does, where Muhammad Ali, the great boxer, went over to Africa to train for a big fight in Zaire. And when he returned, the reporters asked him, "What'd you think of Africa, Muhammad?" Now remember, this was a black man from the then democratically controlled South. This was a black man who had already converted to Islam. This was a black Muslim man. They said, "Muhammad, what did you think of Africa?" And he said, quote, "Thank God my granddaddy got on that boat." So even back then, in the hardest times, people knew that America was in fact great. And so when this revolution failed, they went underground. They started something called the Long March Through the Institutions. They took over these schools and turned it into their ministry of indoctrination. They took over the news and entertainment industries and turned it into their ministry of propaganda. Now they have their ministry of social communications. And it was Mark Rudd, and then I'll finish up. It was Mark Rudd, one of the founders, another despicable man who said it must be wonderful to kill a pig, talking about cops. The bloodier, the better. That's the kind of people who trained this generation. You're not booing me, right? And you're not saying Bruce, right? Mark Rudd said the true flowering of the 60s will come in the 90s when we've taken over the institutions. Well, he was wrong only because he missed the obvious. Once they'd taken over the institutions, they then had to use them to brainwash successive generations. Well, 30 years from the 60s to the 90s, what's 30 years from the 90s? Which is why they've finally taken off their masks. Which is why they're finally calling themselves what they've always been, socialists. It's why